Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Teacher Talks. My name is Ben Barber. I am your host for the show, and I am very excited to talk to, I have to fix his name in the thing here because he never puts in his full name. Father Erik Larsen from Christchurch Westerly. Father Erik, hello. You are the first person to ever ask before the podcast if there's an intermission for a bathroom break.
Well, when you get to a certain age, these things, you just want to make sure you've got your bases covered.
Listen, I did several morning shows with my dad at the beginning of the pandemic when he was in the nursing home. And he would just in the middle of the show say, "Up, break time, gotta go." And then he was in a wheelchair at the very beginning for the most part of that, and he would just go, "Gotta go," and then start to wheel himself into the bathroom. And then I just have to cover. So it's not out of the realm of possibility.
That's okay. I don't have a private bathroom here either. I'd have to go down the hallway. So, well, you know what? I think I can make it. Just wondering, these silly little questions come up now and then.
I love it. So you, it's funny because I want to say it's because it's the exact same format as doing a show, but they are services. I was about to say that you're the host of Morning Prayer in Compline, but you are the officiant for
Bingo.
Morning Prayer in Compline for Christ Church every week on Wednesdays and Saturday Complines as well as being the retired priest associate there. Let's talk about we'll get into Christ Church in a little bit, but let's talk about your history. When did you become a priest? How did you become a priest? How long have you been a priest? Fill me in.
Well, it doesn't seem that long ago. That was 1980 when I was first ordained. But I realized when I'm talking to you, that's a long time ago. That was before you were born.
7 years before I was born. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that means I've been doing this for a while. Sometimes it comes easy and sometimes it's still like pulling teeth, but no, I had if you will, I had a call when I was in college. I discovered that, I really enjoyed biblical studies, and I had a personal relationship with my Lord Jesus, and that grew into the calling to be ordained and serve God in the church and serve the community. And I found that actually I not only enjoyed it, but I was I thought at the time, pretty good at it. So it was a good fit. So I went from college to seminary, and then spent 4 years up in Cambridge. It's a 3-year program, but I was a slow learner, so they made me take an intern year, which was actually very, very good for me. I was in Gales Ferry, Connecticut, at St. David's Episcopal Church. And it was really, for me, a time to test my vocation, since I was my ordination track and my Masters of Divinity track were kind of off by a year. So I had to sort of get them back into sync. And it was a good kind of time to say, do I really want to do this parish ministry stuff, or am I called to something different, like, college chaplaincy or hospital ministry, or, who knows what? And I really discovered that was really a lot of fun for me. And again, I enjoyed it a lot. And so went back, finished up my degree, was ordained, and went to Middletown, Connecticut as a curate. Now, back in 1980, a lot of the parishes that were in towns, in small cities, still had endowments, the thing called endowments. They're kind of a rare bird these days. There was money, and they could afford to have multiple people on staff. Unfortunately, due to the way the church has changed and the world has changed, that's not possible for a lot anymore. In fact, the church where I was on a staff of 3 full-time clergy, they're now down to a half-time clergy person in Middletown, Connecticut, which is quite a change over the years. we sort of came from a mind of having an endowment was a way to fund programs rather than to sort of save for the rainy day. And we funded the programs and ran out of money, and now they're down to the sticks and stems and seeds and not much left. Can I say that? I guess I can still say that.
You can say whatever.
But anyhow, so I went there for 3 years and met my future wife, and then went out to Western Connecticut in a little church called St. Andrew's Marbledale, which is in Western Connecticut, just north of New Milford, south of Litchfield. Lake Warramog is there, town of Washington. It's gorgeous, gorgeous country. Spent 7 years there, had a wonderful time building up the church, getting married, having 2 kids, and deciding then that I was ready for something different after 7 years. And what was different was that I had the opportunity to go overseas, and I was called to be on the cathedral staff at St. John's Cathedral in downtown Hong Kong, and went there sight unseen with my family, young family. Kids were 2 and 4 years old at the time. Oh, wow. And and it was, again, a wonderful, wonderful time. The church at that point was still, the colony was still a colony, wasn't going to change over until 1997, and we were there from 1990 to 1994. So we were still under the British mandate. There was a crown colony, and there were great preparations being made for the handover to China, which took place on June 30th, 1997, which was the end of the 100-year lease. And so now Hong Kong is a special administrative region of the People's Republic. But back then it was more British than London, I think, in some ways. English was the language of business, and Cathedral had most of its services in English, which is kind of odd because it's the cathedral for all of Hong Kong and Macau. And now the last 3 deans since I've left have been all Chinese. So that's probably the way it should be. But it also said that, after 4 years of my contract there, that the clear movement of the church was towards indigenous clergy, having people who were Chinese serving Chinese people, rather than having, so they're colonials as we were sort of serving. It was fun because there was an awful lot, there still are an awful lot of English-speaking people and people who worship there in the congregation from everywhere from South Africa and Australia to England, Scotland, Wales, and the United States and Canada. So it was kind of a mixture of English-speaking people from all over the world, and we made such good, long-lasting friendships there that still really kind of sustain us. But after 4 years, it was clear that I was never going to be, in a position where I would be moving up anywhere. That I wasn't Chinese, and that's fair enough. That's clearly, there's nothing you can do to become Chinese. You either are or you aren't, and I wasn't. So we came back, and I served the church in Simsbury, Connecticut for 12 years. Good run there, and was called to serve on the bishop's staff in Hartford for the Diocese of Connecticut, being the deployment officer, the transition officer for about 5 years. Did a little stint in Niantic, Connecticut as a brief interim before being called to be rector at Middletown, St. Columba's Chapel in Middletown, Rhode Island, which is on Aquidneck Island, just across the line from Newport. So that was good. Retired there. Now it's going on 3 years ago. And before I had retired from there, Sunil Chandy, the rector here at Christ Church, said, it would be really kind of fun if you and I could work together when you retire. I said, yeah, that may be fun. And it is still good. So that's sort of the thumbnail sketch of, where I've been over the last 40 years. Got grown kids now. We're living in Waterford, Connecticut, which is a 22-mile trek from Christ Church. And this is my church home, and I'm real happy here. So, and I do, as you say, I'm doing, most of the time I'm doing remotes on Wednesdays from my oratory, as I call it, my basement. And I'm doing morning prayer with a reader, and then I'm doing Compline at 6 o'clock, and then it's repeated on Saturday nights.
Yeah.
So
So first of all, there's so much there that I'd love to unpack. Uh, I love. So, am I wrong? Did I mishear? Were there two Middletowns? You ended in Middletown, Rhode Island, but you started in Middletown, Connecticut.
Correct. I know that's
Awesome.
kind of weird.
No, that
It's
not at all.
really the old karma thing, you know.
Yeah, and I think the entire story about Hong Kong is just riveting, and I'd love to ask you like a million questions about that off air. But I think that I think you're right. Like it's what a wonderful experience for you and your family to have been there, and what an appropriate thing for them to go with Chinese clergy moving forward.
That's right.
Absolutely. So,
I think one of the things that experience taught me and my kids is when you have an opportunity for an adventure, seize it. Go with it, run with it. If it doesn't work out, okay, you have a chance to, do something else. But if it does, it's like, I think that was the single most formative event and decision in my family's history, if you will. What formed my kids and us as a family made us sort of taking us out of rural northwestern Connecticut and putting us into a international, worldwide kind of international city that was just amazing progress for us as individuals and as a family.
My dad from roughly 2 or 4 to 10 or 12 lived in his dad was in the military and stationed. My dad was born in 44, so his childhood was spent in post-war Europe, in
Yeah,
France and Germany and Austria. And that's something that, like, him and his brother and sister always talked about, was what a unique experience that was to grow up um as Americans abroad. And so I can only imagine what that was like for your children, to be able to spend those 4 years in Hong Kong, and then come back home. And at that point, I mean, when you're 2 and 4, and then you've spent 4 years there, and you come back and you're 6 and 8, what is home?
right.
Home was Hong Kong.
Well,
Um,
I got to tell you that they didn't get used to sort of being stuck in the back of a station wagon. They were more used to being in airports.
yeah, that's that's amazing, and it sets them up for a completely different life than, you know what I mean? Because now
Absolutely.
you know what's a possibility and what's an adventure, and all of that. Um, when you are in so at the beginning of the pandemic, obviously the pandemic is how you and I met, and how I started working with Christ Church, and producing literally a show or a service every single day of the week for the last 2 years for Christ Church. But a lot of times, multiple so you mentioned how you met your wife at a church. Your wife is an organist, I believe, or a
Is the
pianist.
church musician for the next 2 Sundays. She's been 9 years at St. Andrews by the Sea in Little Compton, where
Yep.
she's the organist choir director. But that is a hike from Waterford, Connecticut. That's an hour and
Yes.
40-minute ride in good weather with no traffic. And we're coming into a time of the year where the good weather is certainly not guaranteed. And it's time for her to sort of become a substitute organist much closer to home. And but it'll also give us a chance to worship together, which we don't really get to do much, and really haven't, because this isn't her first organist gig. She's been playing the organ and leading choirs for the last 25 years maybe. And
Yeah.
so it'd be nice to actually sit in the same church, even if I'm up front and she's in a pew. That'd still be nice.
Uh, but
Get
at the
together.
beginning of the yeah,
I was going to say we might actually even get together, sit in a pew together someday.
that would be amazing.
Radical.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's unheard of.
I know.
Who But at the beginning of the pandemic, what was wonderful was that you were in your oratory, as you call it, the basement, and you would say, I have to be down here right now because there's another service going on upstairs.
Right.
during the virtual church where she would be playing upstairs while you were preaching downstairs, which is sort of probably not something you ever thought you would do, right? In 1980,
It
you
was
never thought
weird.
that you'd be leading church services from your basement.
No. And it's a good thing we had it redone because you should have seen it before. Would have been kind of wild. Well, it would have been more like, possibility for like a haunted house with spider webs and stuff going all over the place. But now, since it's been redone, it's a comfortable spot. And here I am in my gracious, spacious office here at Christ Church, which is actually it's the associate clergy office. It's not my office, and it's used for a variety of other things. But it's still nice to have a place I can put my stuff.
Absolutely. I have some of my stuff laying around Christchurch at the moment.
Is that your camera in the office that I saw?
It is, yeah. Yep. It's sort of an emergency vestry situation last night that we weren't prepared for, so I had to just kind of leave it there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
That's the nice thing about being an associate. You don't have to deal with those emergency situations.
yes. That's, as a matter of fact, someone, I think it was Father Sunil last night was like, Eric's retired and he's loving it. Like that's
not my problem, man. Yep.
that's right. So what is that like, right? So after leading churches for almost 40 years, so going on 3 years, retired would be 2019, so 39 years ish leading churches, and now being retired and sort of, it's almost, I would say this, I would almost say you're in the fun uncle stage.
You're right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's or grandpa, where you can just say, okay, it's yours again. Take him home. Clean the dirty diaper, and I don't have to do that stuff anymore.
Yep.
And there's a certain element of being freed up and doing the kind of stuff that you want to do rather than the stuff that you have to do. I don't have to go to any more meetings if I don't want to. And quite honestly, every month, 11 out of 12 months of the year, for as long as I can remember, there was what's called a vestry meeting. And in the Episcopal Church, a vestry meeting is like the executive committee meeting. And, Episcopalians know that, but sometimes, you say, vestry, what's that mean? Everybody get dressed up together or something? And that's actually a sacristy, not a vestry for us. But the vestry meetings took a lot of, that was really where you had to do a lot of planning ahead of time, and sort of getting all of your ducks in a row. All the reports are ready, and to not have to deal with that administrative stuff anymore is very freeing. I feel like I can do what I want and what I like, and I can do some pastoral care work. I meet with parishioners. I can go to the hospitals. I can do preaching occasionally, sometimes more than occasionally. I can lead services from my oratory and sort of do what I want with that, sort of make it my own. It's freeing. And if I want to take some time off, that's the other really nice thing. If I'm feeling like I want to get away, for 40 years it was have a nice weekend, and now I can say I'm going to take this weekend off. I think I'm going to go up to Vermont or whatever I'm going to do, and that's kind of a bonus.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that all the time.
It's nice for sure, and you seem like you're having fun and like you're enjoying it, which is really nice.
Way. Most of the time it's true.
What has the change been like of, and I kind of asked this to every single faith leader that we've talked to on this show. What has it been like to switch to the pandemic and to worry about all of this,
Mm-hmm. I think you put the word worry is a concern. There's an awful lot of people who are tuning in online, which is a good thing, going to our virtual services. But there's a lot of people who are concerned and worried about, the latest, variant of the pandemic. Now we're at Omicron, there was Delta, and there was the original thing, but it has people scared, and rightly so, because if you don't take it seriously, the virus doesn't care. And it has terrible ramifications for people who are, especially immunocompromised or otherwise sick with something else or aged. Or so one of the things I think is that there's a lot of underlying anxiety that's still there, hasn't gone away, and probably won't go away in the near future. And I've seen it in that our numbers on Sunday mornings, well, Saturday evenings and Sunday mornings, are down. They're depressed, and I think it's because there's an abundance of caution. People are taking it carefully, one step at a time, and it's always nice to have a full house, but it's also these days it can be dangerous for people, and it's wonderful. I would say that one of the blessings that coming back into the live services again has been having our choir. Because they're tremendous. I mean, what a uplifting, presence they have in our worship and our fellowship together. And it's, you see 30 people who are under the direction of Mr. Kent. It's just, it's wonderful. And so I appreciate that. And even that isn't quite where it could be without all of the COVID restrictions. Things are moving in that direction, but there's still this anxiety, this underlying everything. And that's probably the biggest thing. We're blessed at Christ Church that even though the attendance numbers in person are down, the attendance numbers overall, at least according to Caswell Cook, our senior warden, if you add together our virtual congregation and our physical congregation, we're about where we should be. Even though you don't have that, one-on-one contact, eye contact and fellowship, physical presence. So that's great. I mean, and I think that's not necessarily typical for all the churches. I think we're blessed that way, and partly it's because of the good programming we have. I think it's the good the technical expertise that you bring and that everybody else brings to having a good production of our worship. And like I say, it's a blessing. But there's still we all long for the days when we can get together with 200-300 people together in the same hall and sort of lift up a mighty voice and sing,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I think that the what's great too about those numbers online is that we count them extremely conservatively for attendance. So for those attendance numbers, it is what the average live viewers are that watch a significant portion of it. That is what counts as an attendance. Whereas we might say like 90 people watched Sunday morning service in total over all of the platforms. But the actual, you look at the views and how many people were like touched by Christ Church at that moment. And by the end of Sunday or by Monday afternoon, it's like 700 or more on a low day. People tuning in, people catching a couple minutes of it, people, just watching the sermon or just listening to the choir for a minute or something, taking a moment. I think that Christ Church reached over well over 100,000 people online in 2021.
Incredible.
Yeah. So, and over 6,000 unique, so there's a lot of services and a lot of stuff and that adds up, but, over 6,000 unique people, went to the Facebook and checked it out and followed and did all of that stuff. So that's kind of crazy in and of itself.
And I don't know that necessarily is what's been happening with a lot of other churches either. I think that's pretty unique to Christ Church, which is, I think, I don't know. I don't have the statistics, but it seems to me that that's not what I'm hearing from what's the scuttlebutt around the rest of the church. But I'm grateful and I'm happy.
It's different. So different, different churches have different thoughts and different models of what they do and don't do, and what their purpose is, right? And I think there was a wonderful guest on Food for Thought. I'm not sure what his name was yesterday, who was talking about if you're a small community church and your purpose is to serve the small congregation that you have, then that's amazing. And if you're a larger church that has the resources to go out and do more things, that's amazing. And you can sort of help each other,
Mhm.
the way that like when like Reverend Bettine comes to Christ Church, and she has a very small Episcopal church 10 minutes down the road, with a very small congregation that does not do the sort of things like food for thought and ask a priest and all of the complins and stuff. But those people are able to get a little bit from Christ Church, and Christ Church is able to do a little bit with them. And that, like, those sorts of things are fantastic. And I was just talking in another recording session. I was just talking with my pastor for 15 years from the Baptist church. And he was like, our parishioners, our congregation, like some of them didn't have the internet.
Wow.
So he
Yeah.
drove around and did that. And so it's all about what it is, and
Mhm.
Christ Church is using it as a platform to help others and to grow and to do all of those things. And I think that that's fantastic, when you're looking at like declining Sunday school numbers, or declining baptisms, or whatever, and it looks discouraging. And then you realize, like, well, somehow we have more pledges than we've had in the last, whatever.
Mhm.
And look at the viewership here, and the world is changing quickly.
That's true, and it is a mixed bag. I mean,
Yep.
we cannot do what the team does at St. Thomas Alton just because
Yep.
we're too big.
Yep.
We can't have that sort of the pastoral connection that she has with her parishioners when she's got 35 people coming, and we have 350 that are watching or coming. It's just even with two associate clergy and a full-time rector, it's stretching the limits. But we can extend our ministry, through the miracles of modern science, right? So,
Absolutely. What is what is the what is one of the biggest things that you've learned in the last 40 plus years of being a priest? Like, what's something that sticks with you? What's a memorable lesson that you've learned, and that you carry with you?
that's a good question. I think one of the things is that Jesus Christ is the same. God is the same. Yesterday, today, and forever. But the church has changed. How we see each other, how we see God, how we see the institution. We've become, over the last 40 years, so as a society, so much more secular, that the church isn't sort of something that you take for granted. It's something that is exceptional, that you have to make an effort to be a part of, rather than something you just sort of grew into. Because more people have grown out of it than seem to be growing into it. So that's it. We're dealing with a culture, and Rhode Island in particular is one of the, I think they've said, one of the least churched areas in the country. I think it's maybe second only to like Washington State or Oregon. And a lot of that is because of people not been exposed, but have left their faith traditions and have just said, I'm done with church. And that's now not something new. That's the second and third generations that's been going on. 40 years is quite a long time, and time enough for people. If your grandparents stopped going to church and your parents didn't go to church, the likelihood of you going to church is also a lot smaller than it would be if it was a family tradition. So that's one of the probably biggest things, is the secularization of culture, and the fact that church is not something you take for granted. It's something that you make a distinct decision to do and to be a part of, rather than just sort of like, that's who we are, that's what we've done. It's different in the South. I think in the Northeast, we're not in the Bible Belt here. It's not expected. After you greet somebody, what church do you go to? It's like, you go to church? What's that all about? So it's not normative, and that's I think the biggest change in the culture that I've seen. And the biggest change in the church is having to adjust to that. The fact that, we had the teeming Sunday schools. Even when I was in Simsbury, this is in the late 90s and early early 2000 to 2006, we had a Christmas pageant with 90 kids in it. And that's an amazing number. That's no exaggeration. And that wasn't that, of course, that means a lot of kids that didn't go to Sunday school wanted to be in the pageant, but that's the size of the youth presence that we had. That's extraordinary. And that doesn't happen. And that was only 25 years ago, about 25 years ago now. That part of the world has changed as well. I think even in that time, which is when a lot of other churches were experiencing a sort of a dearth of young people and young adults, we were blessed to have that happening. I think that's just less and less the case these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure talking to you. I look forward to Wednesdays, and today is a Wednesday when we're recording this, and I get a triple dose of Father Erik, which is always fun.
And you get to hear me sing tonight again. Oh boy.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of my favorite parts of Compline, honestly.
Yeah, it's under mine too when it goes all right, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll have links to Christ Church in the description of this video so that people can find out how to watch the services that you are a part of and all of that good stuff.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your friendship over the last 2 years. It has meant the world to me. And I really appreciate it. And I love our chats on Wednesdays.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Ben. Appreciate it too.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. I'll talk to you in like 3 hours.
Gotcha.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
One of the coolest priests I know. Yeah, I don't think I can. There are literally other priests that work with him that work with me. So I can't say definitively, but one of the coolest priests I know, Father Erik Larsen. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you know any teachers, faith leaders, experts, stuff like that you think should be spotlighted on this show, please send me an email and let me know, because I would love to talk with them. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday.